At long last, the first roster for Mauricio Pochettino is revealed, and it comes in, not with a bang, but with a whimper. I mean, I'm not trying to diminish anything here, and I'm going to start this by saying it doesn't matter who Mauricio Pochettino called in. He could have called in Landon Donovan and Casey Keller and Long John Silver. I would be like, it's okay. It's Mauricio Pochettino. No criticism here. You got carte blanche. You have clout for days. You pick whoever you are. We are behind you because you are who you are. So, not that he was going to pick Long John Silver or Landon Donovan. So, he picked a roster, 19 of which were on the Copa America roster, a 25-man roster that will be playing in 2 games coming up on October the 12th and October the 15th. And my first feel is that he didn't select this. He cut and paste the roster from September, said, we'll start with this group, which is fine, by the way, and we'll take it from there. There were no surprises. Minor ones at that. We'll get into the entire roster, and we'll talk about that in detail. But this felt like, Mikey Varas has made the selections at some point, or U.S. Soccer made the selections at some point for Pochettino, and then said, all right, we'll start here, and we'll take it from here. In fact, Mauricio Pochettino, addressing the media, said, we trust the opinion and info we see from the national team staff. So he is easy into this. And he also talked about the difficulties he had getting a visa. So everything has been slowed down with regards to his early days for how he wants to approach this. Now, historically with Mauricio Pochettino, we know he likes to hit the ground running. We know he likes to shape his team in his vision. When he was at the club level, he shook things up. He was James Bond, shaken not stirred, new players for Tottenham and all of that, because he has a vision of the type of player he wants. This roster says U.S. Soccer picked it, and he is using it as a launching point. Everything he has said is that everyone has an opportunity, and not everyone, but that 50, 60 players has an opportunity, and he wants to see guys put their hands up and see who really wants it more than all others. And we're going to break all of that down, the roster, what he said, and what we can expect here on the Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. The full library is rocking and rolling. It's there for your listening pleasure. Like and subscribe us here. Leave a comment so we can have a chit-chat. Love having a conversation, an argument, you name it. Here to talk football, soccer, which we all love so much. And this is such an interesting topic with regards to where we are headed. And again, we got to let him do his thing. So this was the roster, 25 players. The goalkeeper situation's going to be illuminated because I think the job is up for grabs based on some of the things that Pochettino said, which we will touch on. Those 4 guys, including the incumbent Matt Turner, the minor surprise of Zach Steffen. If you heard it here, I thought he was going to get called in September. He had a bit of a cryptic tweet feeling like, hey, maybe we're not going to get called in because we're on an MLS player. That appeared not to be the case. There's a relationship because Pochettino will remember him from the Man City days. Defensively, and I should remind you, there are 4 key players, or several players that are not available due to injury. Tyler Adams, Gio Reyna, Chris Richards, Cameron Carter-Vickers, going further back to Serginho Dest. So there's opportunity at central defense, and we will see that here in October. Tim Ream is there. We'll talk about him in a moment. Mark McKenzie, Miles Robinson, who should not be a surprise for anyone. He would have been called into September, except he was at the Olympics, as well as the Copa America. Midfield, Brendan Aronson, Gianluca Busio, minor surprise, but he was on the fringe of the roster, and he's playing for Venezia in the Serie A. Johnny Cardoso, Weston McKennie, Aiden Mars, Yunus Musa, Malik Tillman. The strikers, Flo Balogun, Ricardo Pepi, Christian Pulisic, Josh Sargent, Tim Weah, and Haji Wright. Then we'll get into what he said, and we'll talk about the roster. Very quickly, he said he wants to play either a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, positions that this U.S. team is familiar with. I'd be curious to see him use 2 forwards because I think we have a lot of good ones. I hope we get to see Josh Sargent here at some point because it's getting very frustrating. I'm sure more for him than anyone else about how he cannot get into this roster at this point. So we will see. Or he should get on the field, I should say. So He's going to have that formation. We know he's very good with young players. This is not a exceptionally young team. Maybe there's some young guys that we saw at the Olympics, Griffin Yao, Kevin Paredes, that impressed Pochettino at some point down the stretch here. So the roster, we can break this down in many different ways and figure out what's going on. If I was a player, I would want to have my name heard in October and not say, well, maybe when he's getting closer to locking down a Gold Cup or a World Cup roster, I want to be around. As much as Mauricio Pochettino shakes things up and moves things around, maybe he gives the incumbents the upper hand. I'm not crazy about it because I saw a malaise at the Copa America with this group. I saw it continue in September. It is something that I think some players have to learn the hard way. And I'm sure they're going to be attentive when they arrive in the October camp. And I'm sure that they're going to know they're going to have the reset button, but they're not going to all do it the right way. And I think there should be some casualties because of that. And there may be less talented players who have that eye of the tiger that might be able to fill that World Cup roster when it rolls around. The 2 games, October the 12th, USA Panama in Austin. October the 15th, a rare road trip, Estadio Akron in Guadalajara, as the United States will take on Mexico. So that's going to be very exciting when that one rolls around, and we'll have it covered for you here on the Soccer OG. So there's opportunity here. But again, this is it does feel like Pochettino's like not jumping in with both feet into this, what we've discovered, where he has been looking at tapes and breaking down players. He did mention in the press conference where I listened to everything, there were some interesting things there, that there was that he has not reached out to any player. He had a chance meeting with Jedi Robinson, and other than that, that is it. Everyone else, he's to his words, he goes, I don't want to play favorites. I want to give them all a fair chance and meet them at the same time. And that's fine. I mean, sure. And that's great for this group of players because they've got to be feeling good because they're probably going, wait, who did he speak to? There's paranoia going on. These guys want to be part of the biggest moment in American soccer. Yeah, you better believe that they are making phone calls and dotting the I's and crossing the T's. What's going on? We want to know. So I don't know how much he's going to shake it up to the point where he has done in the past. We have a pretty defined core. I would like to think it's 6 or 7 players. It's definitely Christian Pulisic. Flo Balogun will certainly be part of it. Jedi Robinson. Gio Reyna probably makes it in that group. Weston McKennie and maybe a couple others. And he wants that to be defined. And then he can find the specialists or the things that he might be lacking, whatever that might be. And I can't answer the question if he shakes it up a lot. He might fall in line with U.S. Soccer. He may want to simplify his life. We'll find that out in November, how much different that when they open up the Nations League, that team is going to look like. But he is, he's making a lot of money, $6 million a year, and he has suggested there would be changes. He suggested that everyone's going to have a sniff here for the United States. We shall see. Also want to mention, there is time, not a ton of it. There are 10 rosters between now and the World Cup. This could mean many things. I can't imagine he is going to bring in a whole different group of players. It has to be maybe 4 or 5 changes. The November roster now seems like one where we'll get a better idea, because even though there are 10 windows here, I think by window 3 or 4, you want your team in place, and you don't want to be worried too much about at least the first 15, 16 players. The World Cup is too close to be here, and you don't get enough time with these players. I don't know if I mentioned that, but he addressed not getting the visa here, so he's playing a lot of catch-up. And you can see he's got the virtual background when he's talking, so he's not in the United States. We hope he can spend time here when the opportunity arises. He certainly will be here for those 2 games. Only one in the U.S., mind you, the other one in Mexico. Let's look at the players. The goalkeeper situation feels up for grabs. Mauricio Pochettino did also mention answering a question about players not playing for their clubs. And this is a shot at Matt Turner. It's also a shot at Gio Reyna, to a lesser degree for a guy like Flo Balogun, who's not playing enough. Luca De La Torre didn't make this roster. He has not been playing for Celta Vigo. He might have been the first casualty. I don't want to say that, but him not being here was maybe that he was the one guy that was here before that's not here now. And the only reason you can come up with it is that he's not playing. So he may have fallen off the back. And look, I don't want a lot of guys that aren't playing for their club regularly on this team. I want a sharpness. And I know for a fact you can have 1 or 2 guys that aren't playing regularly. If you have 4 or 5, that's a problem. So Matt Turner is not going to be playing for his club, Crystal Palace. He is a backup. And I tend to think his days as the number 1 are over. And first of all, if that is the case, I'm not going to badmouth him. I want to thank Matt Turner because he got us through a very difficult situation when the goalkeeping situation was deteriorating, where we weren't developing the talent and we were hanging on. Zach Steffen, who's back on, didn't have the goods. Ethan Horvath has never developed into that guy. The younger guys haven't taken the gradual steps. So without Matt Turner, who knows what the World Cup or other things would have looked like. So Matt, I appreciate you. And if you're still the number 1, good. If you do what it takes. But I think Zach Steffen's here for a reason. By the way, Zach Steffen hasn't been great in MLS statistically. He's playing for a Colorado team which is doing massively better than they did a year ago. And he's a good shot stopper. He's good at saving penalties. He may be a revival project of some kind that there's a familiarity because of his Man City days. That's a big benefit to him. He's one of 4 MLS players here. And I hope MLS players, I think there's a couple guys there, not many more to be honest, that would displace the guys that we have. But as Mauricio Pochettino said, he's going to look everywhere. And that includes MLS and Liga MX for some very good American talent. So Patrick Schulte might be the goalie. He started that first game in September. And he's been a little shaky, but he seems like a young goalkeeper you can grow with until the next guy comes along, if there is a next guy. So that's going to be interesting to see who gets there. The other one is the center backs. This was an alarm bell for me that Tim Ream, I can understand him being in here, but it also told me his presence here says that this is a roster to just be a launching point. Because there's no way Tim Ream will be on the 2026 World Cup roster the way he has deteriorated in the last 4 or 6 months. Father Time, you know what they say about him. And we're seeing it in real time here with Tim Ream. And I would like to thank Tim Ream for the incredible work he has given, because if he wasn't there, who knows what the 2022 World Cup would have looked like. But he won't be the starter. Austin Trusty's on here. I almost want to rule. He's not a guy. He's not an option. So Mark McKenzie, I feel like, is the guy who could benefit. Miles Robinson may get some playing time. Cameron Carter-Vickers will be in the mix here as well. But I don't know. It can't be Tim Ream, right? I mean, we're at the end of 2024. You're telling me in 18 months, it can't. So that's a major part, a position of concern. We'll see who kind of takes it. Again, goalkeeper, center back, not a strong point. Whenever Chris Richards returns, he is going to be the number 1, I think. But he's got some flaws too. And he's part of this roster that stunk it up and needs to be pushed. And I think a couple players need to be pushed out. I'm not saying it's Chris Richards, but a couple guys with that group need to be pushed out. Who is a guy that could impress Pochettino in this October window? I think Aiden Morris is at the top of my list. He seems like that guy who can just give you everything, emotions on his sleeve, and certainly take advantage of Tyler Adams not being available and Johnny Cardoso not being effective. I think Pochettino is going to get smitten on Aiden Morris, so he could be a guy that really emerges here. In October window, again, we just got to wait a little bit. We'll know a lot more, and we'll find out together as to where this program is headed. But it was good to hear Mauricio Pochettino address what's happening. It was good to tell us how he wants to play. And now the first group of players get this shot. And they should take it very, very seriously, and I'm sure they will. And we'll see how much change there is. If If you ask me now, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of change, which is a little disappointing because you wanted to see a lightning bolt. You wanted to be shaking it up, maybe in a smaller degree, but maybe Pochettino can inspire this group to lift their efforts. The Soccer OG, check out the Soccer OG podcast. Like and subscribe us here. Leave a comment. Let's have a conversation. We have a lot of great videos coming your way in the upcoming days and weeks.